Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 21st day of May, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got, I believe the breakup map. Yes, we do. And still the North Slope rivers there, Colville and Sagwan, and the other one there are still iced over and not any observable movement yet, but south of the Brooks Range, just about everywhere is open and ice-free now, with the exception being the Noatak River. The upper Koyukuk, areas of the Porcupine River just has some open areas there, which obviously means ice in other areas, and that particularly so for the Noatak River. But the lower end of the Noatak and Buckland River there, or the Kobuk, is not the Kobuk, but the other one has some heavier ice there toward the mouth of the river out toward the coastline. Anyway, moving on to the hazardous weather graphic, there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out public-wise around the state for the next couple of days, but pretty good storm system, frontal active front coming into the Aleutians. There are gale warnings associated with that. They'll be arriving tomorrow, and at least for tomorrow and tomorrow evening for that area. Then they'll weaken and be mostly small craft advisories on Sunday, but pretty good morning watch wise. We have a lot of cloudiness in over the interior today, actually from the Arctic coast right down to the Gulf of Alaska, and you can see a band there in across the panhandle being driven northeastward by pretty good southwest flow, southwest jet, bringing a lot of rain up to the eastern North Gulf Coast. A 12-hour amount at Yakutat, 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. 1.61 inches of precipitation there. That's by far the heaviest amount in the state. Juneau, by contrast, had about a third of an inch, as did Cordova. And areas of lighter rain fell in over the, a good portion of the interior, upper level low over the Bering Sea. Brought some pretty good moisture or widespread area of light rain to the west and northwest part of the state with, Indian Mountain picked up about a tenth of an inch of precipitation, and Unalakleet had a quarter of an inch of rain. These are 12-hour amounts again, and Kotzebue about a tenth of an inch, and Northway, some moisture got north of the mountains there. They had about a tenth of an inch of precipitation there, and lighter amounts around Fairbanks. A little breezy at Fairbanks this afternoon, seeing winds gusting to 25 miles an hour. Also pretty windy at the airport in Anchorage. International Airport reporting wind gusts to 35 miles an hour this afternoon as that southeast wind kicked in during the afternoon hours. And Palmer seeing gusts to 32 miles an hour as well. Otherwise, kind of breezy. Cold Bay, about gusts 35 miles an hour out of the southeast, or out of the northwest there. Scammon Bay and Tuksuk Bay both seeing winds gusting to about 35 miles an hour. And elsewhere around the state, winds are pretty on the light side, especially out west there, with a lot of clouds over the Bering Sea, areas of light rain, also higher pressure out there as well, developing and slowly shifting eastward. Ahead of the stronger system will be affecting the Bering Sea and the Aleutians late tonight and into tomorrow evening. Putting that through again, you can see some breaks, sun breaks up there over the northern Bering Sea and into the Yukon Delta there, and possibly Nunivak Island, and a lot of clear skies south side, Pacific side of the eastern Aleutian and Alaska Peninsula. The lower clouds banked up on the north shores, and Kodiak Island, partly sunny skies, as well as Bristol Bay around Iliamna Lake today. On the chart, a couple of low centers over the interior with the showers, and the one near the Seward Peninsula associated with the upper level low there that brought a little more widespread, more significant precipitation, but it's still on the light side, as I mentioned, anywhere from a tenth to maybe a third of an inch. Other areas had less, and a lot of showers over south central Alaska. The southeast winds cutting those off over the western Cook Inlet area, northern Cook Inlet to Palmer. And again, the heaviest precipitation occurring with a good southwest flow aloft there for the eastern North Gulf Coast around Yakutat. And rainfall amounts down toward Dixon Entrance really didn't amount to too much. Out to the west, higher pressure, central Bering Sea, making for some light winds, but a lot of low clouds out there. And the next system farther to the west already bringing rain into the western Aleutians. And that associated front tonight will begin to increase those winds over the Adak-Atka area. And the original low west of Shimia will merge up with that 995 millibar low coming up from the south there around just south of the western Aleutians. Otherwise, low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska keeps showers going. Southwest flow, actually upper level low associated with that surface low, will keep that southwest flow over the northern panhandle. Look for periods of rain to continue tonight and through into tomorrow. Again, heaviest amounts in the north and central areas with the lighter amounts to the south. Heidelberg, Klawock, and Metlakatla, those areas will see the lightest amounts and be more scattered in the showers. Definitely heavier amounts, so up to the north in advance of the upper level low moving through. And low pressure will keep widespread clouds, flurries, fog going for the north slope in the Arctic coast. Mixture of rain and snow showers for the Seward Peninsula area. And northern Bering Sea, eastern Bering, pretty light, low clouds and fog. And for tomorrow, that high shifts a little farther to the east, so we look for some clearing skies, mostly cloudy, probably be some sun breaks around, especially the Yukon Delta, into the mid-Yukon River Valley area, Kobuk Valley, even the Seward Peninsula could see some sun breaks, as well as Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula areas. Chance of showers in the afternoon for Kodiak Island, showers central eastern interior, scattered in the central interior and diminishing. But not ending completely, as it stays upper level trough axis right across about the western edge of that rain pattern there. So areas to the east will see additional lift, keeping the chance of moisture going there, and good southwest flow again into the northern panhandle. That'll be the heaviest rain, periods of rain tomorrow, and gale force winds come into the Aleutians there with a 986 millibar low just southwest of Adak. That low drifts eastward. Doesn't fill much, but the gradient ahead of the front slackens off enough that you're looking at small craft advisories now. There could be some possible gale force winds, especially gusts there for the Alaska Peninsula on Sunday there, particularly Cold Bay and maybe Falls Pass. But looks like precipitation holding off, holding back to the west, at least into the afternoon, but just making it to the Pribilof Islands. And then for the interior, mostly sunny, lingering showers over the eastern interior down toward the Yakutat, chance of showers to the panhandle. Lows tonight, mid-40s for the southeast coast, upper 30s, lower 40s, southern Alaska. Interior, upper 30s to mid-40s, upper 20s Arctic coast, near 30 northern Bering Sea, near 40 over the Aleutians, 38 for the Pribilofs. Highs tomorrow in the 50s, southern Alaska, lower to mid-50s for the Panhandle Kodiak Island, and mid to upper 50s near 60s to Sitna Valley. Same thing for the Yukon Flats, mid-30s, mid to upper 30s for the Arctic coast, and 40s out over the Bering Sea, mid to upper 30s for the northern Bering Sea and the Seward Peninsula. And then lows the following morning, 35 to 42 for southern Alaska, the Panhandle in the lower to mid-40s, and lower upper 20, mid to upper 20s, north slope to the Arctic coast, 30s central interior, a little below freezing northern Bering Sea, a little below 40 for the Aleutians to near 40 for the eastern.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic. Saturday morning, IFR, North Slope Arctic coast, northwest coast into the Noatak Valley, and looks like south side of the DeLong Brooks Range and northern Kobuk Valley, northern Koyukuk into the northern Yukon Flats, Porcupine River to the border, marginal VFR to the south, a narrow band of VFR right through the central interior into the eastern Alaska Range, 40-mile country, and some IFR, eastern southern slopes of the western and northern Alaska Range, and IFR for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Resurrection Bay into possibly far end, east end of Turnagain Arm, and on down to the southern Kenai Peninsula. VFR for Kodiak Island, marginal VFR surrounded by IFR for the Panhandle, Gulf IFR, eastern Bering into the southwest coast IFR, and more IFR out over the western Bering with the next system. And for the afternoon, shaping up, let's see, areas of IFR continue over the Arctic coast, marginal from the north slope into the Brooks Range. The interior, mostly VFR, some areas of marginal VFR. IFR eastern North Gulf Coast to the Central Coast, as well as over toward the border in the Panhandle, but improving. Some areas down toward Dixon Entrance becoming VFR, VFR Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, southwest interior, IFR right along the southwest coast into Norton Sound, and ending at the Bering Strait, and a band of IFR there across the southwest Bering, including Kiska, Adak, and Adigan, or I'm sorry, yes, Adak. Anyway, for Sunday morning, IFR from Atka Island to Mount Nikolsky there for the Aleutians, and another band across Kiska and Amchitka. Otherwise, marginal VFR in northern Bering Sea, but VFR there, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula looking good, Kodiak Island, lingering marginal VFR along the western Alaska range up to maybe Windy Pass or so. Some IFR for the eastern Copper River Basin Sunday morning, and IFR along the Arctic coast, eastern North Slope IFR, and the Panhandle still down, marginal to IFR conditions, and that persists into the afternoon with the IFR regulated along the coast, marginal VFR, some actually areas of VFR beginning to show up over the Panhandle throughout the afternoon on Sunday, so improving there. Good VFR south of the Brooks Range, interior Alaska into the Gulf, Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island VFR, Bristol Bay, southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island VFR, IFR for the Pribilofs, and marginal for the Aleutians. And moving on to the passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR for the day Saturday, mostly marginal for Adigan, and Lake Clark, Merrill, marginal VFR becomes VFR, and for Rainy, IFR improving to marginal VFR, Windy, marginal VFR, Isabel, VFR, and looking good for Mentasta, good VFR there. Tonita, occasionally marginal throughout the day, which means VFR at other times, and Portage, mostly marginal throughout the day, and Chilkoot and White looks pretty well socked in with IFR through the passes. Freezing levels 2,000 feet across southern Alaska, 4,000 to 6,000 feet to the north, and the Panhandle roughly 2,000 to 4,000 feet, up to 8,000 feet there over the central Aleutians, and 6,000 feet north of the Pribilofs, 2,000 feet up to St. Lawrence Island. Icing looking areas of rime icing along the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle, as well as the western Aleutians. Jet stream showing west-northwest flow coming down with a couple upper level lows over the interior. Southeast 55 knots across the Brooks Range, otherwise 60 to 80 knots there, 90 knots from the south ahead of the Bering Sea or the western Aleutian low, and moving to 9,000 feet. Low pressure central eastern interior, several centers there, so northwest winds, not too strong, probably 30 to 40 knots there from the western Arctic coast on down across Kuskokwim Valley, cutting across southern Cook Inlet and Kodiak Island. Stronger winds out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians with that system, up to 60 to 65 knots. Same thing at 3,000 feet there, with high pressure in over Bristol Bay and bridging into the Seward Peninsula to a certain extent, but 35 knot westerlies with a low off the western Arctic coast. Light winds everywhere else. Turbulence, nothing too significant. Light to isolated moderate chop for the Alaska Peninsula, western Aleutians, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope area, and the eastern Beaufort Sea coastal zone looking kind of turbulent, but nothing too serious otherwise.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining me once again is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, or GINA, based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Eric, welcome back to the show.
Well, Dave, it's great to be back. Thanks for inviting us again.
Sure thing. And today we want to talk about identifying burn scars. That would be the burned up area after a wildfire when the flames and the smoke are gone. We can see it if you drive by it on the roadway, of course, but from satellite, we can also identify those places on the land, right?
You know it. You know that expression, ouch, that's going to leave a mark?
Yeah.
After you bang your knee getting out of the car.
Oh yeah.
Well, the ouch, it's going to leave a mark, that also applies to the landscape. Whenever a wildfire ravages through, it's going to leave a mark on the landscape. After a wildfire burns out, this is called a burn scar.
Okay.
And you can ask yourself, well, that's interesting. We can see a burn scar from space. Right. Then the question is, well, why does that matter?
Okay.
Who cares?
Yeah, fire's over.
Right, the fire is over. We don't need to worry about this anymore. It turns out you kind of do, because burn scars are important. There's this old rule of thumb in the weather business that flood follows fire. The action of the fire in killing off the vegetation, in baking, kiln drying the landscape a little bit, can hinder the land's ability to absorb rainfall. So if you have a fire, especially if it's in complex mountainous terrain. This is classic in California. It can happen somewhat in Alaska too. You get a wildfire in steep, hilly, or mountainous terrain, rips off all the vegetation off the landscape. Then 6 months later, there's a big rainstorm, and you get a flash flood in that area. So flood can follow fire. That's why you got to know where the burn scars are. Secondly, a fire needs fuel to maintain itself. So if there's an old burn scar left over from a year or two ago, and then another summer later here in Alaska in the interior, it's a big wildfire season. If there's a fire advancing toward an old burn scar, well, guess what? That old burn scar is going to be tougher terrain for that new fire to get through, because there's not as much fuel in that burn scar. So they almost act like a natural fire break. These are a couple of reasons why you need to know where those burn scars are. Alaska Fire Service has limited resources. They want to put their people and their equipment where it does the most good. They need to know, well, this is an area where there's no burn scar. We better put people here because that fire could really run.
So really important for weather forecasters and fire weather forecasters for sure.
Oh yeah.
But then how do weather satellites actually detect those burn scars?
Good question.
Thanks.
Well, let's turn the Wayback Machine to the summer of 2015. That was a very active year. Got a picture here taken up in the White Mountains. This is one of the fires in progress that summer, and if you look real close, you can almost see Frodo throwing the ring into the volcano there. So that's quite the vision. Well, let's look at a visible image. Here we are in Alaska's interior. This is before the fires got out of the cage in early summer of 2015. Let's zoom into the western interior here. Again, this is a weather satellite image of visible light, what the human eye can see. We're into the middle reach of the Yukon Valley there in the western interior, Galena area. And this is just a beautiful visible day. Nothing much going on. It's in early June before the fires really got active. But then in 2015, the fires got loose, especially in that western interior. Here's another image. The same satellite pass as that visible image, but now we're not quite looking at visible light.
Very different.
There's a slight change here. This image incorporates something called the veggie band. 0.86 micron wavelength. The micron's very tiny, but that wavelength responds to vegetation, the chlorophyll. So trees and grasses reflect that part of the electromagnetic spectrum back to the satellite. And so the satellite sees that. When signal comes at that wavelength to the satellite, we know, there's some vegetation growing there. This is great. You can identify coastlines so easily because you go from vegetation to water. Turns out if you have a burn scar, guess what? You burned away the vegetation, so that's going to show up. We're going to do a before, during, and after kind of look here. And so we're looking at before. So in this image, we got a lot of green out there. That's wonderful. Another fun thing about this kind of imagery is you can see down in the Alaska Range in the southeast corner of the image, it's blue. That's glaciers and snow in the mountains. So this is not really what the human eye can see. This is these wavelengths are beyond human vision, but we've made them look certain colors. So the vegetation looks green. Now let's look at that same kind of satellite recipe, but during the fires. This is in July. The fires are loose. You can see the smoke in the middle of the image, the smearing look of the smoke, and then we can see some clouds that are white. Icy clouds are blue. So this is in July of 2015. The fires are doing their thing. We're burning up millions of acres. Now let's go to September. The fires are out. The audience has left the theater. You know, the event's over, right? We're done. But guess what? Now look at those brown patches.
Look at that.
All of those places are where the fire has burned away the vegetation. So you can see where the fires were. You can add up these perimeters, get acreage burned and such. And so that's good to know. Now remember, flood follows fire, and these are also natural fire breaks. So you need to know where these guys are. In the course of the 2015 summer season, we went from before with not much burn scar in this area to just a couple months later, we can see so much burn scarring on the landscape. What's interesting too about the satellite and looking at burn scars is you realize that burn scars are the gift that keeps on giving. You can forget that a couple of years ago maybe there was a fire in a certain area, but the satellite won't forget. So in the summertime we get wildfires in Alaska, but guess what? In the visible imagery here we can see the burn scars just a little bit, but they're not as prominent as in that veggie band. But then you can't see them at all if you cover them up with snow, right?
Exactly.
So here's an image from the middle of the winter time.
Wow.
And snow on the ground by this recipe looks blue. Again, these are wavelengths of light that the human eye can't really see. We're getting up into the infrared, near infrared. And the way we've assigned colors is if there's snow on the ground or there's a glacier, it looks blue, kind of intuitive. So this is early April of the following year, 2016.
Okay.
We're just about to get into breakup. We got a lot of snow on the ground, and now it's all going to melt. And as the snow melts, then you get our final image here. Doesn't this look familiar? This looks like a lot of what we saw in September of the previous summer. So this is the spring of the next year. The fires themselves might not have overwintered, they're gone, but the fire scar does. And as the snow melts away, and then you have breakup, and then you have green up, whenever the leaves come out, the grass comes back, except in the burned areas, they're having a tough time because everything got burned off the previous year. So you can see these scars even the next summer, multiple years. It depends on what kind of vegetation there is. You know, some of the tussocky tundra grasses, they'll grow back really quick, but to get a forest to come back, that'll take much longer. So these burn scars, eventually the landscape will fill in the burn scar. It will heal itself, if you want to use that metaphor. But for the next few years, you can still keep track of these on satellite. And again, the reason we want to do that is that the burn scar can facilitate a flood, and it can act like a fire break. So there you are, the veggie
Fascinating
band.
tools. So if you're a weather satellite and you're looking at my bowl of vegetables here, you might be able to pick out which one's the pea, which one's the tomato, and which one's the carrot, and apply that information precisely to whatever it is you're working on there. That is really fascinating stuff, that we have that capability from so high above the planet Earth, and Alaska for that matter.
Yep,
Eric?
eat your veggies.
Yes, definitely. I think I will. I'm hungry. Thanks so much for joining us again, Eric, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you right here next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Up on the Arctic coast there, still solid from the central Arctic coast, Point Barrow eastward, till you get to Mackenzie River Bay there, and it thins out. And also along the western Arctic coast, shorefast ice, though, still in place right up on the coastline there. And Norton Sound opening up there, central and eastern Norton Sound. Still a lot of ice, though, over the western areas, north side of the Seward Peninsula and through the Bering Strait. Coastal water forecasts. For tomorrow, for the southeast coast, we're looking at southerly winds, 15 knots, central and northern inside waters, southern areas, Clarence Strait, south of 10, 2-foot seas. And for the south coast, on the outer coastline, southwest breeze, 15 to 20 knots, seas at about 8 feet, and then south to east winds as you head north at 15 knots with 8-foot seas. And for the Sunday forecast there for the north coast, west-northwest, 10 to 15 knots, 5 to 7-foot seas, south coast, west 15 knots, 6-foot seas, and winds on the light side over the inside waters as well. Clarence Strait northwest 15, Stevens Passage northwest at 10, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay south at 15 with seas at 3 feet. And then for Saturday, Prince William Sound, light northeast breeze 10 knots or variable at 10 with seas slight, and northeast 15. Middleton Island area, western North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, west winds light 15 knots. West 20 knots, Camashack Bay, Cook Inlet, south to southwest, 20 knots, 6 to 7-foot seas. And for Sunday, light north winds for Cook Inlet at 10 knots with 2-foot seas, light westerlies for Camashack Bay and the western North Gulf Coast, as well as Prince William Sound, all at 10 knots, seas 2 to 4 feet. And for the eastern North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands, light west winds at 15 knots with 5-foot seas. And for Kodiak Island, tomorrow, Saturday, west winds 15 knots, 5 to 7-foot seas, and east to southeast winds for the Alaska Peninsula at 15 knots. Bristol Bay, west at 15, turn northwest 15, there, Sitkinak to Castle Cape. And for Sunday, for Kodiak Island, on the east side, light winds from the southeast at 10, Chillicothe Strait, southwest maybe 15 knots. But small craft advisories there for the Alaska Peninsula, that front pushing eastward, southeast 30 knots, 6 to 9-foot seas, and east at 15 for Bristol Bay. On Alaska Island, small craft advisories, southeast winds increasing to 25 knots for Saturday with seas 5 feet. And on Alaska Island, Look for gales to develop during the afternoon, coming up toward 40 knots toward late afternoon. Seas building to 11 feet. Adak and Atka gale warnings. Southeast 40 knots. Seas 12 to 14 feet. Amchitka Island southeast 35 knots, and then west at 30 for Kiska, Shimei, and Attu. Outlook for Sunday, northwest 30 knots, Shimei to Kiska Island. Amchitka Island north 25, south to southeast 25 to 30 knots for the Adak Atka area. And Unmak Island south to southeast 30 knots. Gale warnings for the Unalaska Island area. Southeast winds at 35 knots. And for the southwest coast, south to southwest winds 10 to 15 knots, or St. Matthew Island, St. Paul, St. George, southeast at 20, St. Matthew Island or St. Lawrence Island, southwest at 15, same for Norton Sound, seas 3 feet. Outlook for Sunday, Norton Sound, east winds 15 knots, small craft advisories for the southwest coast, winds east 25 knots, and 30 knot small craft advisory winds for both St. Matthew and St. Paul and St. George Islands. Out of the east for the Pribilofs, St. Matthew Island, northern Bering Sea, northeast on the direction, St. Lawrence Island east at 20. Brisk wind advisories, eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow at 30 knots out of the east, 20 knots out of the east for the central coast, lighter on the west side, and then swinging around to the west from Cape Beaufort to Wales at 20 knots. Outlook for Sunday, south to southwest winds, Wales to Cape Beaufort, 10 to 15 knots. Small craft advisories, western Arctic coast, southwest 25, and much lighter winds there on the east side, 15 knots out of the west. And for tonight, look for mostly cloudy skies, areas of low clouds, fog, and flurries there for the North Slope and the Arctic coast. Any accumulations will be minor. And showers pretty widespread over the interior with mostly cloudy skies, cool temperatures, central eastern interior. More scattered showers, or showers become more scattered, south central Alaska Kenai Peninsula, and showers with a trough for the Panhandle. Periods of rain continue, but lighter for the eastern North Gulf Coast. And that next storm brings gale force winds into the Aleutians tomorrow, central Aleutians, and then eventually to the east. High pressure, dry conditions along the coast, showers central eastern interior, and the outlook for Sunday, pretty good front with a little bit lighter winds there for the Aleutians and Bering Sea, mostly sunny over the western central interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.